see how it plays out in the story. His sister asked if he would take his nephew, Talus, as an apprentice, because she knew how good he was. But at once, he realized that Talus's nephew was almost, in fact, maybe even more incredible as an inventor than he was. The young boy took one look at the jaw of a fish and was able to construct a saw. But because he was the master, Daedalus took credit for that invention. And he was so infuriated, he murdered the boy and cut up his body and put it in a burlap bag, thinking he could get away with it. But as he was dragging the bag to bury it deep, the blood seeped through and was on the ground, and he was discovered. His sister was devastated and actually took her life, so that Daedalus was banished from the city of Athens. With nowhere to go, he started traveling south and ended up at the Isle of Crete, which is in the Mediterranean at the southern end of the Grecian Isles. Well, there in Crete, King Minos was ruling with his queen Persephone. And it didn't take long for King Minos to realize that he was an incredible inventor. So he got him involved in a project, and he created the most elaborate labyrinth, like a maze that people would go into and get trapped. But you know what? It's just 7:10, and this is right where my story gets a little kinky. So I hope this early in the morning you can handle it. But Poseidon had given King Minos a white bowl as a gift. And unbeknownst to King Minos, Poseidon had set a curse on his wife that she would become enamored of the white bowl and lust after it. So the first thing that she asked Daedalus to do was create a wooden cow suit so she could make love to the bowl. Go figure. He succeeded, and out of this, of course, a man, a woman, and a bull came a monster known as the Minotaur. And he inhabited the labyrinth and began killing off people. In fact, every year King Minos had to create a tribute of 7 of the most handsome young men and 7 of the most virginal, beautiful young girls, and send them into the labyrinth to die. Well, the princess, daughter of King Minos and Queen Persephone, fell in love with one of the young tributes, the fellow, and asked Daedalus if he was inventive enough. He, after all, had created the complicated labyrinth. Could he save this young man? He did it by handing the man a skein of yarn and telling him to anchor it at the entrance of the labyrinth and carry it with him as he traveled, so that any minute, if he was approached by the Minotaur, he could follow the yarn back to safety. Sure enough, that trick worked, and he lived, but it enraged King Minos. Then he wanted to kill Daedalus. He needed that tribute. He needed to satisfy the Minotaur. So he imprisoned Daedalus in a tower. By this time, Daedalus had a son, Icarus. After making the cow suit for the woman, he wanted a little something himself. So he fell in love with a lady slave of King Minos, and their son was Icarus. Imprisoned with his son, he began scheming. It was a challenge. Come on, I'm an inventor. How am I going to get out of this fix? He looked at the sea, but King Minos had blocked off all the ports. That was impossible. He looked to the land, and once again, on a small island, King Minos could place guards, so that was impossible. He was inspired by the sky, and he began creating wings. He watched a bird and saw them take flight, and thought, if only I could create wings. So he began fashioning them out of limber wood, wax, and feathers. And he tested it out at night, attaching them to his son Icarus's back. Told him to take flight off the tower, and it worked. He watched his son in the night. He knew that they could both escape. It was set to go the next morning after the test, but he took his son and said, "These are fragile. They will take us to our freedom, these wings, but you must be careful. Fly directly behind me and keep at an even keel as you fly. fly too close to the sea, the water could bog them down. But if you fly too close to the sun, it may melt the wax, and you could fall to your death. In the first moments of flight, Icarus obeyed. He followed his father and did just what he said, flew at an even keel. But as the day wore on, and the freedom of the flight felt so good, Icarus became exuberant and flew nearer and higher to the sun. Daedalus called to him, "Son, no, stop, this is dangerous." But his voice was lost in the wind, and his son never heard it. And instead the father watched him plummet into the sea as the sun melted the wax away, and there was no flight left in the wings. At this point, I would explain to you that these myths do hold archetypal themes. But I'm not going to draw any conclusions. I'm going to leave that to each of you as individuals to look at the themes of jealousy and exuberance, to feel the freedom of flight and excitement, and then decide for yourself how you, according to Greek mythology, will live your life.